So then let me present Victoria Ahmadi, who is a master's student at NTNU at Institutt of Datateknikk and
Computer science.
Computer science. Oops. And she has looked at the toolkit and also made a prototype of how it can be used digitally. And we are very interested in hearing your experiences, because we haven't actually heard about them before.
No, it will be the first time actually presenting it without seeing my 100 pages of dissertation. I recently changed the title of it because it was first digital tools for reflecting on co-creating activities, but since my focus was more broad, like how can we use also the paper cards format, then I kind of had to change it to more tools in general. So the research questions I was investigating was how the participants in co-creative activities perceive the use and usefulness of tools intended to support reflection on the activities. And by co-creative activities, I mean generally any setting where you collaborate together to create some sort of value. And the value could be knowledge, it could be a concept, it could be a product, just as it has been introduced today. I will not focus on the findings for a research question 2 because that would be too detailed. But what I kind of try to end up with or conclude the thesis with is recommendations for designing such tools in general based on what I have assessed from the experiences with using the toolkit. So I wanted to investigate how the toolkit as it is developed today, how was it perceived by relevant participants. And I also want to investigate how can this be transferred to a digital format, because that hasn't been investigated yet. The only digital format we have now is the mirror board, which is kind of like it's almost like the paper cards, but just on the screen. So to this aim, to gather all the feedback from how the participants, what did they think about using the tool. I conducted both semi-structured group interviews and unstructured interviews in focus group. And the unstructured interviews were mostly done in the second iteration, just to gather like general feedback on what they thought about the digital format that I was developing from the tools. So more about the 2 iterations. The first iteration was mainly evaluating what I call the early prototype of the tool, which is the toolkit that was developed by you guys. And this was evaluated by student groups in a subject called Experts in Teamwork. What the students do in that subject is that they essentially, basically they participate in a co-design kind of or a long-term project where they create some concept or a product for a customer that they collaborate with to solve a societal problem. But the main focus in that course is that they work together to create something together. And it also been evaluated in workshops with dental healthcare personnel. And it has also been evaluated in an internal workshop with the cluster as well, with some participants in the cluster. And in the second iteration, a digital format, I will show like what I mean, how the digital format looks like in the next slides. But it was evaluated in focus groups with developers and students, and also by some participants of this cluster. I created the kind of two prototype to transfer it to a digital format. So the first prototype was using Mentimeter and to see how the participants thought about using that as a tool to evaluate their process using the same questions that are in the toolkit. So I picked like 3 questions and I just transferred it to Mentimeter and basically used it and got evaluations from the focus groups. I also created a kind of a web page format of the tool, where you can see like some of the screenshots here. For example, the card asking about level of contribution is what you see right here. You can rate, and then you could write the where you elaborate your rating. So this is more screenshots just to show how it looked like. Yeah. So there were a lot of findings in this dissertation, and I would just focus more on the general key findings of how they perceived using such tool to evaluate their process. One of the most discussed findings among the participants was that they thought the toolkit helped them to provide guided questions, which makes it easier for them to even just start a reflective process. So as opposed to like having open-ended question, it was easy for them to have a topic to focus more on. And based on that, new thoughts emerge about their process. And both the toolkit and the digital format of the toolkit, they provided a way to surface the thoughts presented either as a presentation or as sticky notes on paper cards. In either format, they could see what their peer group members think about their process, about their teamwork, about anything related to them, to their group work. And what has been emerged from all the interviews is that the participants thought that it was very important to have a discussion afterwards. So like I think Jonathan said that you can do it individually by just writing and doing more like your own reflection when you use the toolkit. But the participant also stated that they need to have like a discussion to resolve any conflicts that were surfaced in the tool, any disagreements, any agreements they have, just to focus on moving forward, like focus more on the action points. What can we do from what we have just learned by evaluating our process using the tool? One shortcoming that was actually interesting that I got from some of the participants was that the cards themselves, as they are, the toolkit, it does contribute with a lot of why and what questions, but it kind of lacks the questions focusing on what now, like how should we take the lessons learned from what we have reflected, and what should we do with all these reflections gathered. So that was actually interesting feedback I got from the couple of students and also some of the facilitators I interviewed. And that is actually an important thing to focus on, that you don't just stop with, yeah, okay, what we have done and this is what we learned about our group process, but also how can we improve ourselves, how can we improve our practices using our reflections. Yeah, and these are essentially, there are a lot of experiences raised with using the digital format, but I thought I will keep it short and focus on what the key findings are related to how they thought about using the toolkit in general. Yes, that was actually all.